Jordan Love, well, he didn't get his fifth-year option picked up, but he did sign an extension. We'll dive into that, plus other fifth-year options that were turned down, picked up, and our best fits from the 2023 NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to another edition of Locked On NFL. He is Lorin Cox in for Tony Wiggins. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at CoxSports1. I'm James Rapien, and we're going to start with Jordan Love and the Packers, which just continues to get even more interesting than it already was with Aaron Rodgers leaving. But thank you so much for making us your first listen. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or check us out wherever you get your podcasts and hit that follow button. And shout out to all the everydayers out there. And Lorin, the Bengals on Tuesday, or the Bengals, I cover Locked On Bengals, so there we go. I first slip of the day. The Packers on Tuesday exercised not a fifth-year option, but agreed to an extension with Jordan Love. So he is not in a contract year anymore. It's a 1 year, $13.5 million guaranteed extension. He can make up to $22 million, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. And so now the former first-round pick in 2020, it's not like he's going to make a ton next season, but he does have some guaranteed money that takes some pressure off of him, takes some pressure on the Packers, because they haven't even seen him play yet. So it would have been tough to pick up that fifth-year option.
Yeah, it's such a weird, unique spot as far as quarterback and team goes. Like even, in the past with Aaron Rodgers, like they at least still got to see him on the field a little bit sooner than this before they had to start making longer term option choices for him. But yeah, this deal to me feels like neither a vote of confidence nor a vote of no confidence. It's just sort of like kicking the can down the line in a way. It's weird because it's both like, it's not the Packers showing their belief in Jordan Love, but like you'd also think if you're Jordan Love, if you really believe that you're going to do great this season, then you would maybe want to be a free agent sooner and be able to cash in sooner rather than locking in a lower salary than what your fifth-year option even would have been. So it doesn't feel like Jordan Love saying, yeah, I'm betting on myself. Also, it's kind of like both sides saying, yeah, maybe it might not go amazing this season, but we're not going to judge everything based on just this one season. But it was a weird situation to head into this decision, and the decision they made was somehow like weirder than either the decisions of taking the fifth-year option or declining the fifth-year option.
Yeah, I agree with you, because if you're Jordan Love, you could have held the Packers' feet to the fire and said, no, I'm going to go out there and ball out, and then you're going to have to pay me, much like, and it is a bit different, but Jalen Hurts, right? He had a great contract year and kind of put the Eagles in it, because if they didn't pay him that way and just franchise tagged him, for example, then it would have been tough. The difference is obviously Love was a first-round pick, so they had the fifth-year option if they wanted to exercise it. But I think this is a win-win for both sides, because Jordan Love, as confident as he might be, he doesn't know what he is. And that situation in Green Bay, I think it could work. I think maybe they could be competitive this year. And I like what they did in the draft, and we can get into that in a second. But even Aaron Rodgers went 6-10 as he transitioned from Brett Favre. Like, having that shadow hang over you is tough in year one. Even if Love ends up being a really, really good player, the Packers are in sort of a bit of a transition. So this way you get a little bit more security in 2024, and you could still make over $20 million if you play at a high level. And the other part of this, Lauren, I think is interesting. They could always add to this. Let's say Love does go out there and plays really, really well this season and shows that he is the future of the franchise. Well, then they can extend him again. It's not like they have to play out that 2024 contract. So I think it gives him some long-term benefit, for the 2024 season that he didn't have before, without completely crippling the Packers locking into a fifth-year option.
I'm trying to put aside any potential like implicit anti-Packers bias I might have from for so long, but I can't help but sit here and feel like, okay, Jordan Love has been in Green Bay for 3 full years now. This is year 4. Obviously hasn't played much. He started a regular season game or 2 when Aaron Rodgers was hurt, has played in the preseason. I totally get that you do need to see him do it in live action with, the real offseason of being the starter, and that certainly in no way should they have a final determination on Jordan Love right now. But I can't but feel like if he's been there for 3 years, don't you feel like there should be a certain level of confidence to, I don't know, at least accept the 5th-year option? I mean, no one's saying you got to sign him to a 5-year max contract right now and say, he's he's our long-term quarterback option. But like to see him in the building for 3 years and to say, you know what, we're still not sure if he's good enough to just for a 5th-year option. Like I get it's a big $20 million fully guaranteed. Like you want to be smart and not commit money to someone that you're not certain about. But like, shouldn't they be a little more certain, even just having him around the building, seeing how good he is at practice in preseason and in some of the regular season moments? Isn't that enough to say like he's our guy that we're really, really confident in, or is it not? Like, is he not their guy?
It's tough. I think he could be. Until you see it, even if you see it in practice, I think it's that, or preseason. It's that where it's like, okay, well, let's see how it goes. It happens with the lights on. And how he plays with the lights on. And the other part of this is it's just proof that the Packers held on to Aaron Rodgers 1 year too long. That's all it is. They should have moved on after the 2021 season. They would have probably gotten more, even though they got a lot, probably gotten more from the Broncos in a deal, or whoever they would have traded him to in a deal. And then you would have been able to see Jordan Love while he was still on his rookie contract, because you drafted him. You didn't draft him to sit him until year 4. And they did, and Rodgers played at an MVP level, and that's part of it. At the same time, you're right. I think that there's I don't even want to say doubt. There's just an unknown there. And so that's why I think this is probably the best of both worlds. Being a guy who covers the Bears, I'm sure you wanted them to pick up his 5th-year option, because then it could handicap them a little bit. If he struggled, well, then they're locked into $29.5 million guaranteed. Jordan Love would make what Joe Burrow is set to make in 2024, for example. Justin Herbert, what he's set to make in 2024. So that would be the waters they would be swimming in. And instead, I think they split the difference. And overall, I don't love that they picked, and Sean Clifford's from Cincinnati, so I'm well aware of his game. I don't like that they picked him in round 5. Pretty shocking there. But you add Luke Musgrave, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft. They added some weapons for Jordan Love in the draft. So he should feel pretty good about his chances of playing at least at a decent level. You got some good running backs there, pretty good offensive line. They should be okay.
Yeah, I love the investment in the quarterback position, around the quarterback position. The year after the first draft after Aaron Rodgers is gone, I was hoping so badly that they would use a 1st-round pick on a wide receiver, as Packers fans have been clamoring for a decade now, to use a 1st-round pick on a receiver for Aaron Rodgers. They almost did for Jordan Love, but still got some very good weapons for him that, again, starts to remove some of those excuses as far as like, okay, well, if Love struggles this year, is there excuse? Oh, well, he didn't have great this, he didn't have great that. Like, you start to reduce some of those ifs or some of those buts, and to give them a more holistic evaluation of their quarterback.
Up next, we'll continue the conversation, 5th-year options, those that got picked up, those that didn't, and some more detail about the option, because it changed in recent years. And that's probably why the Packers didn't pick it up on Jordan Love and tried to split the difference. We will do that coming up next. But today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is a one-stop shop for all things sports wagering, and you need to make a fast break to FanDuel right now, because the NBA playoffs in full swing. It is LeBron, it is Steph, it is Kevin Durant, it is the Joker and Nikola Jokic, and the NBA playoffs. It's my favorite time of year, basketball-wise. You got to get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 with FanDuel. It's $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't hit, for all new customers. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. So you can wager on CP3, Kevin Durant. Maybe you think they're going to rally from an 0-2 deficit. They could do that, and you could cash in today. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Lorin, let's keep things rolling here. 5th-year option-wise, to me, it's interesting because it changed a few years ago with the new CBA. It used to be only injury guaranteed. And you saw a lot of teams exercise the 5th-year option on first rounders because they thought that they might take a step. And then they would be able to get out of it if the player was healthy and could pass a physical. Well, that's no longer the case. It is guaranteed. And so if a team exercises a 5th-year option, and that player struggles, it's not like they can get out of it the next year. It's a fully guaranteed contract. It's similar to the franchise tag a year early, and it's a little more cost beneficial for the franchise, but the concept is essentially the same. Are you surprised by any of the guys that didn't get the 5th-year option picked up? Patrick Queen, we talked about him before the show started. The former first-rounder linebacker for the Ravens. They went and they got a guy in Roquan Smith who you're familiar with to pay him, and obviously that paid off for Baltimore. He's a perfect fit there. But as far as Patrick Queen is concerned, he's one of the many that didn't get their 5th-year options picked up.
Yeah, you start to look at just like the list of players from that first round, and we've seen, I think it pretty well coincides with this, becoming fully guaranteed now, and teams being a little bit more hesitant to commit to that as a guaranteed money fully in advance. Now the priority seems to be on like the premium position, especially you look at this year. It's all the guys that got their 5th-year options generally tended to be quarterbacks, offensive tackles, wide receivers, and cornerbacks. Like across the board, those were the majority of the 5th-year options that were picked up. Whereas the guys that were not were a lot of, you mentioned Patrick Queen, like linebackers, like Queen and the Clevin Chasen from the Jaguars as an edge guy, like
Chasen, yep.
Yeah, and a few different, like the running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't get his 5th-year option picked up, and like guards and centers haven't gotten a lot of their options picked up. All of the like lesser positions, teams are not willing to commit that 5th year fully guaranteed because either like these guys aren't so valuable to them that they feel like, oh, we got to make sure he's locked in. Like it's easier to find replacement level players at those positions if you end up not being able to re-sign your rookie, or those players are also just cheaper to re-sign to long-term contract extensions anyway, that it's not like you're saving a ton of money, and you may end up spending more money on that 5th-year option. It might end up costing you more than whatever the long-term contract extension would be that you reach with that player on a per-year average. So it just financially, it's no longer making sense for teams to take those 5th-year options on those less premium positions. And it really feels like this year and now moving forward, it's going to be a lot more reserved for, if you're not using that first round pick on a tackle, corner, wide receiver, or quarterback, like a lot less likely that those 5th-year options are going to be exercised.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a good point because you look at some of the top guys whose options were declined, and naturally Chase Young is the biggest name, I would say, but it's injuries. It's not necessarily performance based, because I think if he had played well, then they pick it up easily, and that's an easy one for them.
Well,
all of the guys,
if you don't mind, there's a lot behind the scenes with Chase Young that is not super publicly out there yet, and I don't feel at liberty to get up, but that yes, injury is part of it, but there was the injury situation last year had some situations where maybe he was, not as injured for as long as perhaps he was listed as injured for, and was kept out for longer than necessary because of other things going on off the field. So there's some additional red flags there that make the Commanders very hesitant to have him be a long-term part of their organization. And I think makes it unlikely that he gets traded for something significant, that teams are going to be hesitant to give up a lot to go trade for him if they do end up trading for him.
Wow. See that? No, that's a good nugget, because I think I can feel the number of people listening like, man, our team should go after Chase Young. Well, Locked On NFL listeners and their favorite teams. So interesting. That's interesting that they did that. And part of it is, again, it's guaranteed. And that's tough. You're right. If there's other flags or just injury, but other flags too, then, it might scare you away. Jeff Okudah wasn't eligible for it. But Isaiah Simmons, they turned him down. And you're talking about linebacker. There's 3 linebackers on this list. We mentioned Patrick Queen, Kenneth Murray, who coming out, it was like, man, outside of Simmons, he's such a great linebacker. They turned his 5th-year option down, so he didn't get that exercise. The tackles, Jedrick Wills did. Andrew Thomas had his picked up. Defensive tackle, Derek Brown had his picked up. Like a lot of the tackles hit. And so it is quite interesting to look. The wide receivers that ended up being good players hit. Jalen Reagor not. Justin Jefferson did. CeeDee Lamb did. So you're right. The premium positions part of it is a good point. And the other part is here, landing spot matters. It just, with some of these guys, landing spot matters, and it didn't work with some. Like Brandon Ayuk, I don't know if he gets his picked up if he ends up in that situation that Jalen Reagor did in Philly. And I'm not saying that Reagor and Ayuk are the same player. Ayuk is obviously a better NFL player, but you go with Kyle Shanahan, You go into that offense, and now you look up, and he's just turned into a really, really good player for them, dynamic weapon alongside Deebo Samuel. So a lot of these guys did get their options picked up, but a couple big names that didn't. And moving forward, why take a linebacker in round one? I mean, I guess unless you're the Lions, but if you're just talking about an off-ball linebacker, not someone that's getting after the quarterback, this is kind of an example of that. Isaiah Simmons was a freak coming out. Didn't make sense to pick up his fifth-year option, Murray, and then obviously Patrick Queen.
To me, it not that it's exactly the same as the running back conversation, because the positional value and the length of their careers are definitely different. But to me, I feel similarly. Like if you're a really good team that feels like, man, we just need a linebacker to put this defense over the top and really make us a Super Bowl contender, then we can talk about using that first round pick at the linebacker position and it being worthwhile. And I think it's kind of a similar thing at running back. Like if I'm a team that just, my running game is like my one big offensive weakness, but I'm set at quarterback, I'm set at receiver, I'm set on the offensive line, and I just need a dynamic player. Like that's when I can take that position, because it's more of a, like those become more like win now type of draft picks, as opposed to guys that are at more of the premium positions that get the fifth year option picked up, that are more like, longer term foundational pieces that still generally seem like better uses of your first round pick. But it's more justifiable if you're in a situation where we're just a linebacker or a running back away, even though they might not be players that down the line we're going to use our fifth year option on, but it's still worth it for at least those first 4 years of their rookie contract to get cost controlled play at a position that might not be as valuable as others.
Up next, let's continue the draft conversation, because we just talked about some guys that worked and their fifth year options got picked up, some that didn't. We'll talk about some of our favorite fits, not necessarily first round fits, but favorite fits and landing spots in the 2023 NFL draft. Let's keep things rolling here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On NFL. He's Lorin Cox, in for Tony Wiggins. I'm James Rapien. Who stands out to you, Lorin, as a perfect fit, great fit? We talked a few weeks ago when you were in for Tony, and the Jackson Smith and Jigba to the Bears. We tried to speak it into existence. That did not happen, obviously, but you were able to land Darnell Wright in Chicago. But what are some of your favorite fits in this class?
I do think, as far as like a team and a prospect, right in Chicago are a nice fit in terms of a scheme that can make up for some of his deficiencies. But first of all, I don't want to talk about an offensive tackle for 5 minutes, but also, it's not fun talking about my own team. The one that stood out to me right away was Quentin Johnston going to the Los Angeles Chargers later in the first round there, to be able to pair like a big, long, fast, vertical wide receiver in that offense with Justin Herbert. And I mean, obviously, like they still have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen for now. I mean, there was all that talk about whether Allen would be around or not, and seems like we're going to get one more year of that. But Quentin Johnston, obviously still a raw route runner, still a receiver who needs to, I think, learn to play a little bit more up into his body. But it's like all the physical tools you look for to be that game-changing potential number one wide receiver on the outside, and to let Justin Herbert load up in the pocket and fire downfield to somebody like that, I think really should be a lot of fun. And in the meantime, like still in year one, Quentin Johnston doesn't have to come in and be that number one wide receiver. You still have Williams, you still have Allen. He can be a little bit of a slightly lesser role, so you don't need to ask him to run the full route tree right away, and he can grow into that role slowly, but still make some big explosive plays for that offense. I think that's going to be really fun to see those two work together for the next 5+ years.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good point. I'm going to give you a round two guy, and someone that I think was overdrafted, but I think when you're the team that does it in a weaker wide receiver class, it makes sense. Rashee Rice out of SMU to the Chiefs. I think he can come in and contribute right away. Has good size, 6'1", 204, good route runner. Someone that when you lose a Juju Smith-Schuster, who, say what you want about his TikTok game, was a big part of that offense, mattered in that offense. You need to get a little more reliability there. I know they have Kadarius Toney. I get it. They still have Travis Kelce and other weapons. Maybe you're hoping that one of the young wide receivers takes a step forward. That said, I like Rashee Rice. I think he could come in there and certainly help them and make an impact. So that would be a guy in round two that makes sense. Round one, it's interesting because there's not many weapons, but one team that stood out to me that just seemed to nail the draft was the Steelers. Just the guys they got, like you get Broderick Jones, then you're able to get Joey Porter Jr., excuse me. And then you come back and you get Darnell Washington in round 3. Like I think that they just continue to land quality players, and I'm missing one. Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Really like him at defensive tackle as well. I thought they
I-
had a pretty good haul for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Benton was one of the names I was going to go to next. Benton to the Steelers. Like he's a guy who's positionally versatile for them, and like I think you can throw him at the nose tackle, especially in like passing situations, and he could be. He's not light, but he's just not. He's not your traditional zero technique 350-pound nose tackle, but one of these more like new age, aggressive high motor nose tackles. But then he can also play the 5 technique down in base end, and if you want to put him at the 3 tech when they go into the nickel packages, like to me, he's like a classic Mike Tomlin defensive lineman who can just do a little bit of everything for them. Like really, and to be able to pair him with Cam Hayward to be that guy that can mold him. I think there's enough similarities in the skill set there for those two guys to feel like you've got the past, the present, and the future with those two guys sort of handing the baton off on that Pittsburgh defensive line. That's going to be a lot of fun.
My favorite day 3 pick, or one of them, and I'm not letting any Bengals be eligible just because why go that route?
Yeah.
I love Darius Rush, the cornerback out of South Carolina, to the Colts. I thought the Colts had a heck of a draft too. And Rush was someone that I thought maybe could fall to like pick 90, 92, like so late round 3. To get him with the last pick of round 4, anyone you talk to about Cam Smith was like, oh yeah, Darius Rush is really good too. Like clearly he impressed evaluators. Fell for whatever reason. Maybe there's multiple reasons. So that's one observation. The other is how fast the quarterbacks went in this class. I was surprised at the run on quarterbacks, and it kind of started with Sean Clifford with the Packers, but like Clayton Tune, end of round 5, it's just, or sorry, end of, start of round 5, excuse me. I don't know.
You had like,
man.
You had Stetson Bennett right before that, and Aiden O'Connell to the Raiders, like right at the end of that round 4 there too. It was a weird run of like 6th and 7th round quarterbacks were going like in the 4th and 5th round. And it was like, okay, this is something. You got to get your guy, I guess.
Yeah, like going ahead of guys that I think like Israel Abanikanda. I get it, running back, but I would take Abanikanda over. And I'm not saying, that Arizona needed another running back or Cleveland needed another running back, but Dorian Thompson-Robinson at the start of round 5, it just seems early to me to go that route. But just another observation. Anyone that stand out to you in a negative way or just draft theme that stood out?
I was gonna say with the Cardinals and Clayton Tune too. Like, why even? I mean, like I get it, but like, why draft a quarterback in the 5th round this year when you might have the number 1 and number 2 pick next year? Like, you can anticipate that they're gonna have 2 really high draft picks next year that could presumably be a quarterback or be in a position to take a quarterback. So I don't know why even bother taking a 5th round guy this year when, I mean, I get somebody to develop there. But one other name I want to throw
Colt McCoy's backup, I guess, to be Colt McCoy's backup if Kyler isn't ready. I don't know. I agree with you.
It's a weird spot. But one other name I throw out there, Tajay Spears to the Tennessee Titans.
Oh, yes. Yep.
That kind of athlete behind Derrick Henry. Like, to me, those two are a great pairing. That it's a little bit of that thunder and lightning. That, I mean, obviously Henry's got plenty of speed too, but Spears being a great receiver out of the backfield, like that just feels like a great complement piece there, and potentially a long-term option there. I don't know how much longer Derrick Henry's career is going to go in Tennessee. They're kind of in this like half transition period. They got the quarterback now, and they got we'll see how that goes. But like Spears has some of that RB1 upside for that backfield down the line, but can certainly thrive in a rotational role at least for now behind Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I love Spears' game. I do. I think his potential is a 3-down role, can catch the ball out of the backfield, all of those things. And he gives you some insurance. Maybe the right trade offer comes for Derrick Henry this offseason. And if that's the case, you can go that route, or you're right, platoon him and keep Derrick Henry fresh so he can get those long runs in. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL Draft, all of our Locked On shows. Thank you so much for listening during the draft. It was a huge, huge week, huge month. For Locked On NFL, for Locked On Bears, for Locked On Bengals, and certainly Locked On NFL. So appreciate you for listening. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL all week long on YouTube or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And for Lorin Cox, I'm James Rapien, signing off for now. Thank you so much for listening to Locked On NFL.